October 14, 1952. 3:26 p.m. A marketing conference room, Paramount Pictures, Hollywood. The room smells like ink and warm paper. A long oak table runs down the center, scarred with cigarette burns and coffee rings from 100 quiet decisions. Venetian blinds slice the afternoon sun into narrow bands across the walls. Somewhere outside, a soundstage door slams shut, but in here, no one reacts. A poster proof is slid across the table. Not dramatically. Not ceremonially. Just pushed forward, fingertips releasing it like it's nothing more than a formality. At first glance it looks fine, clean, balanced, professional. Then your eyes adjust. The name at the top, the name that once anchored the poster, is smaller. Not gone. Not hidden. Just reduced. Shifted slightly to the right, dropped one visual tier, still readable, still respectable, but no longer commanding the frame. Beneath it in neat pencil, a single word is written. Temp. The star doesn't speak. He leans forward, elbows on the table, studying the proof like a man rereading a sentence that's changed meaning halfway through. No one explains. That's intentional. The room waits. This is not a punishment. Punishments are loud, they provoke arguments, lawyers, headlines. This is a test. Typography is safe. Design is deniable. Font size is subjective. And yet, every person in this room understands exactly what just happened. The marketing executive clears his throat. We're experimenting with balance, he says, just to see how it reads. Reads. As if the issue is legibility, not hierarchy. The star nods slowly. You can almost feel the calculation begin. If he objects, he looks insecure. If he ignores it, the change becomes precedent. If he jokes, the room learns something dangerous, that this matters less to him than they hoped. So he does none of those things. He asks a question instead. When did this change? The answer comes too quickly. This morning. That's a lie. Or at least an incomplete truth. Because nothing in Hollywood changes this cleanly in a single morning. The poster sits there between them, doing what contracts never could. It reframes the conversation without announcing it. His name is still there. His value is still implied. But the visual promise has softened. This is how leverage is adjusted before negotiations begin. As the meeting continues, other details are discussed. Taglines. Release dates. Theater placements. All normal. All routine. And yet, the proof remains on the table like a quiet accusation. What makes this moment so destabilizing isn't ego. It's recognition. The star has seen this before, just not directed at him. He's watched co-stars drift from top billing to ensemble status, seen names slide downward over the years justified as freshness or new energy. He knows the language. What he didn't expect was to see it applied to him without warning. After the meeting, he takes the proof with him. No one stops him. That's another signal. If it were meaningless, they'd insist it stay. If it were permanent, they'd frame it as final. Instead, they let him walk out holding ambiguity. Back in his office, the poster is pinned to a corkboard. He steps back. Then closer. He measures the margins with his eyes, like a man checking distances he never had to calculate before. The emotional impact is delayed. At first it feels administrative. Then personal. Because when your identity has been reinforced visually for decades, billboards, marquees, one-sheets, the moment that visual certainty shifts, something internal loosens. Not anger. Doubt. That doubt doesn't shout. It whispers. Am I still essential? Is this temporary or a signal? If I push back, do I accelerate the slide? The cruel brilliance of the move is that it forces introspection instead of resistance. Later that evening, the star meets his agent for dinner. He doesn't mention the poster. Not yet. Because saying it out loud would give it shape, weight, intent. And right now, it exists in a gray zone where power prefers to operate. Over the next few days, the proof circulates. Quietly. Executives see it. Publicists glance at it. Designers adjust spacing around it. No announcement is made. But everyone notices. The font size becomes a reference point. This is how Hollywood recalculates status without confrontation. By letting others interpret the shift. And interpretation spreads faster than instruction. By the end of the week, the star realizes something unsettling. No one is asking how he feels about the change. They're watching how he reacts to it. Because that reaction will determine the next move. Not theirs. His. And in that realization lies the first crack in the old rhythm of his career. A rhythm built on constant affirmation. Constant visibility. Constant scale. He stares at the poster one last time before taking it down. Folds it carefully. Places it in a drawer. And for the first time in years, he considers a thought that feels almost disloyal to his own momentum. What happens if I don't rush to reclaim the space they just reduced? What happens if I step back before they push further? He doesn't answer the question yet. But the fact that it exists at all means something irreversible has begun. Because once power reveals itself this quietly, you can never unsee the mechanism. The poster proof does not return to the table. That more than anything confirms its purpose. If it were a mistake, it would be corrected. If it were a negotiation, it would be discussed. Instead, it simply exists, circulating quietly through offices, pinned to corkboards, folded into folders, passed from hand to hand without comment. The star notices who mentions it. More importantly, who doesn't. 2 days later, a publicist stops by his office with talking points for an upcoming press appearance. The conversation is smooth, professional. Near the end, almost as an aside, the publicist says, "We're emphasizing the ensemble angle this time." Ensemble. The word lands gently, but it lands. The star nods. No protest. Still something clicks. The poster wasn't the message. It was the opening move. In Hollywood, design departments don't lead. They signal. They test reactions so executives don't have to. Marketing changes shape first. Contracts follow later. That's the order. The star starts noticing other adjustments. Press photos feature him slightly off-center. Studio memos refer to the cast instead of the picture. Meeting agendas list his name second. None of it is drastic. All of it is cumulative. This is how hierarchy is rewritten without confrontation. Not through demotion but diffusion. When responsibility spreads, authority thins. At home that night, the star spreads materials across his desk. Old posters. Magazine covers. Lobby cards. He traces the evolution visually. Bigger name. Higher placement. Stronger contrast. Then this. The shift is unmistakable. And what unsettles him most is not the change itself. It's how predictable it now looks. He realizes something crucial. This isn't about punishment. It's about containment. Hollywood isn't trying to remove him. It's trying to soften him. To reduce gravitational pull without creating backlash. To make him easier to manage. The psychological effect is subtle but profound. When your status is visually reduced, you begin to self-edit. You hesitate before pushing back. You soften demands preemptively. You wait for confirmation that never arrives. And waiting benefits the system. He meets with his agent. This time he brings the poster. They don't argue about it. They study it. Silently. The agent doesn't need explanation. He's seen this maneuver before, just never aimed at this client. "This doesn't mean they're done with you," the agent finally says. "No," the star replies, "it means they're deciding how much of me they need." The question becomes immediate and existential. Do I push to restore scale? Or do I let the reduction reveal its intent? Because once you challenge a silent test, you confirm its power. Over the next week he makes no moves. No demands. No corrections. No calls. He lets the design speak. And waits to see what it summons. What arrives isn't confrontation. It's opportunity. A new script, interesting but smaller. A meeting request, tentative, flexible. A scheduling suggestion, if you're available. Availability. Once a strength. Now a metric being measured. This is the moment where many careers quietly collapse. Not because the star lacks talent, but because they overcorrect. They agree to everything. They chase scale. They rush visibility back into place. The system counts on that reflex. But the star hesitates. The pause is instinctive at first, then deliberate. He looks at the calendar. It's full, but suddenly optional. He cancels one meeting. Just one. Not publicly. Not defensively. Simply unavailable. Nothing happens. No reprimand. No follow-up. And in that nothing, he feels something shift. The system expected compliance, not absence. By the end of the week, he understands what the poster really asked. Not will you accept being smaller, but how quickly will you try to be large again? And for the first time in his career, he considers answering that question by not answering at all. The absence is quiet at first. One canceled meeting becomes two. A delayed response becomes intentional. The star doesn't announce a break, he doesn't frame it as strategy, he simply stops racing the image that was handed to him. And Hollywood notices, not because of what he does, but because of what he doesn't. The poster goes to print. Not the theatrical one. The secondary markets. Trade placements. Foreign distributors. The adjusted font size is preserved. That's important. It means the test is moving forward. In another era, this would have triggered a call from an agent, a demand for correction, a reminder of box office numbers and past favors. But instead, the star does something profoundly unsettling to the system. He lets it happen. Psychologically, this is where control shifts. Because Hollywood understands escalation. It understands resistance. It understands fear. What it doesn't understand is composure in the face of reduction. A studio executive mentions the poster casually during a lunch. Interesting balance, don't you think? It's phrased like an opinion. But it's bait. The star smiles. Balance is always temporary, he says. Nothing more. The executive laughs too quickly. Because that answer didn't confirm submission. Or panic. Behind closed doors, speculation begins. Is he tired? Is he negotiating something bigger? Is he planning a shift? No one knows. And the lack of clarity creates friction where certainty once lived. Another script arrives. Better than the last. But still framed as an ensemble. The star reads it slowly. Not with hunger. With distance. He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say no. He lets time stretch. This is the moment the industry starts recalculating. Because the poster was meant to provoke urgency. Instead, it produced restraint. And restraint, when unannounced, feels dangerous. The agent calls. Careful now. Are you stepping back, he asks. The star pauses. Not stepping back, he says, stepping out of frame. The distinction matters. Hollywood's power has always relied on framing. Who is centered? Who is scaled? Who is visible? By choosing to leave the frame voluntarily, the star removes the system's leverage. You can't reduce what isn't competing for space. Weeks pass. The trades note his absence, but without alarm. Taking time. Considering options. Being selective. None of these phrases carry stigma. They carry ambiguity. The poster test accomplished something unexpected. It didn't shrink him. It clarified him. It forced a reckoning between momentum and meaning. Between visibility and autonomy. In design rooms, his name stops being adjusted. Not because it's restored. Because it's no longer central to the immediate calculation. And that creates a vacuum. Hollywood hates vacuums. They demand resolution. And so the next move won't be visual. It will be personal. Because when design fails to elicit reaction, the system escalates. Not loudly. Privately. And the call that comes next will test whether the pause is accidental or chosen. The call comes on a Thursday morning. Not from marketing. Not from publicity. From an executive who doesn't usually call unless something needs alignment. The voice is warm, familiar, careful. We've noticed you've been thoughtful lately, the executive says, smiling into the line. Thoughtful. Hollywood's favorite euphemism for unpredictable. They meet in a corner office overlooking the lot. The same posters line the walls, the same framed stills, the same visual language of dominance and legacy. Except now, the star notices something he never paid attention to before. The names. Which ones are centered? Which ones are paired? Which ones have shrunk over time? He's learned how to read this room. The executive gestures toward a chair. We're just trying to understand where you see yourself right now. That's the question. Not about projects. Not about money. Position. The star answers slowly. I'm interested in work that doesn't need to announce itself. The executive nods, but not convincingly. Because that answer disrupts a long-standing assumption that visibility is always the goal. Here's the truth Hollywood rarely admits. It doesn't reward constant presence. It expects it. An expectation breeds control. The meeting ends without conclusion. No deal proposed. No conflict acknowledged. But the power dynamic has shifted again. Because the executive didn't leave with reassurance. He left with uncertainty. In the weeks that follow, the studio hesitates. Meetings are suggested but not scheduled. Scripts are offered but not pushed. Deadlines soften. The machine slows. And the star feels something unfamiliar. Space. This is where the pause becomes identity. Not as retreat but as posture. He takes a long walk. He turns down a project he would have accepted reflexively a year earlier. He chooses a role off the studio system, smaller, quieter, but entirely on his terms. The industry watches. The poster proof becomes irrelevant. Not because it was reversed, but because its power depended on his need for scale. And that need is gone. Psychologically, this is the moment of release. The fear of shrinking dissolves when you realize size was never the source of authority. Choice was. Hollywood adapts slowly. It always does. Executives adjust language, agents renegotiate tone, marketing waits for cues instead of issuing them. The center has shifted. Not loudly, but unmistakably. This is the moment future historians will mislabel as a career lull. They'll chart fewer films, longer gaps, less noise. They won't see the leverage being rebuilt in silence. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The star didn't lose relevance. He refused to perform it on demand. And that refusal forced Hollywood to reconsider how much power it actually had. The next time his name appears on a poster, it will be intentional. Not reactive. Not measured against someone else. Chosen. And that choice, born from a font size reduced on an afternoon no one thought mattered, will quietly redefine how Hollywood treats absence. When the next poster finally arrives, it isn't rushed. No emergency meeting. No nervous explanations. It simply appears months later, on a design table where fewer people are invited to speak. The name is large again. But that's not the point. What matters is why it's large. Not because the studio demanded it. Not because negotiations forced it. But because the project itself requires no justification. The film doesn't need to sell him. It needs him to exist within it. That distinction changes everything. Hollywood has a long memory for moments like this. Executives don't frame them as lessons. Studios don't document them. But behavior adjusts. Marketing teams hesitate before testing visual leverage again. Agents advise restraint instead of escalation. Younger stars are quietly warned, don't react too fast when the frame shifts. Because someone once proved you don't have to. The star's career doesn't surge. It settles into something quieter, more deliberate, more durable. He works less but owns more of what he does. His absence becomes meaningful, not alarming. His presence, rare, intentional, regains weight. That's legacy. Not volume. Years later, a designer will mention that afternoon casually. That was when we realized typography could go too far. They'll laugh. But they'll remember. Because the danger of silent power is that it stops working once it's understood. And that afternoon when a name shrank by a few points and a star refused to rush back into place, made something visible that was never meant to be seen. How control actually moves. How identity is tested. How restraint can outperform dominance. This story isn't about a poster. It's about what happens when a system expects fear and receives composure. When it expects correction and receives patience. when it tries to quietly resize someone and learns it no longer can. Hollywood still uses silence. It still uses distance. It still uses design. But now more carefully. Because once someone proves they can step out of frame and remain essential, the frame loses its authority. And the scale never fully resets again.